Good morning, good afternoon, good day, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the last episode of the business case for Web3 in 2024. And today, with a great pleasure, I'm welcoming here Alexey Shadrin, the co-founder and CEO of Evercity IO. Alexey has a background in finance, in sustainability, and his team has been a long-time partner of Digital Innovation Pavilion. Alexey is also very active and practically a co-founder of financial arm of Climate Change Coalition. So today we're going to talk about sustainability finance, COP29, projections of COP30, Hedera ecosystem, and latest advancements of Evercity IO. So please, everybody, welcome Alexey to the show. Hello,
Hi, Aaron.
Alexey.
Hi, Arena. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here and greetings from Zanzibar.
Wonderful location to be in. Happy to have you here in such an environment, and also for the December episode when everybody is already thinking of well-deserved break. Let's have this episode today. Very casual conversation. And very first question I would like to ask you, Alexey, how did you get into the finance space? What is your background and what is your story?
Yeah, so my background is pretty simple. I studied international economics, and then I got into a trading company in Geneva. We were trading, oil commodities back then in 2007, 2008. That's where I started my financial, career. But that was the first and the last corporate job I had because I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. And in 2011, I started my first company in sustainability and sustainable finance.
And Alexey, what brought you into the sustainable finance space? What is, captivating for you in this field, and where do you see, you know, um, innovation, application specific of blockchain technology? And can you give us an insight why and how in 2011 you got into the blockchain and sustainability space?
Yeah, sure. So I got into blockchain a bit later, not in 2011, but in 2016, I'd say. But what made me start my career in sustainability and start my own company was actually the my willingness to do something beyond just making money. Because back then in 2007, 2008, oil was the price was quite high, and it was really cool to be in the oil business, etc. But I was there in Geneva at the trading desk, and I realized that some people around me, they're just like spending money like crazy, and I looked into their eyes, and they had like no. They seem to be a bit lost and reaching their like 30s and going further. They just seem to be lost and searching for the life meaning, etc. At the same time, I found a very interesting presentation around hedging strategies on the CO2 trading markets, and someone indicated that is something related to the future. So I always loved future and futuristic stuff, and then I started digging, trying to understand what are CO2 credits and how is this trading made, what in fact is it related to. Then I realized that this is actually an economic instrument which is set to help the world combat climate change. And that was really interesting for me. So I started learning more about the climate change. I realized that it's a real threat, as science, proved. Even back then there was a consensus, around the reasons for climate change. And actually, one of the scientists who first connected climate change to human activities was a Soviet meteorologist in like 1970s or something. So that was well known even back then and became even more obvious. And so I was always eager to do something meaningful and impactful, not for myself only, but for the people around me. So I realized this could be a really a great chance to combine my financial background and delivering something good for the planet and for the people. So that's how I started doing what I'm doing actually now. In my career in sustainable finance, spans back to like 2011. But then, that was early years for the sustainability movement, and I was running a carbon fund. I was offering consultancy services to multinational corporations, helping them to become more sustainable. Companies like, PepsiCo, Coca, Bloomberg, Unilever. We worked with all of them. But then suddenly, we were invited to the Paris Climate Conference, where the Paris Agreement was born. And I realized that we need to do more on tech enabled climate financing. So combine climate um, financing and tech innovations and help accelerate climate funding across the globe. And this is, in fact, what we're still doing now. And this is what led me and my co-founder, Lisa, to crypto and blockchains in 2016.
And Alexey, this is a very interesting story and like also super fascinating to see your vision, very early on when the oil industry was everything and people were just, getting rich and everybody dreamed about getting a job in the oil and gas industry and have like this, good lifestyle, free mind. And you were already back then with this vision, that the world is going in the direction of climate change. And today in 2024, this is one of the key topics. And like at the COP, of course, like I personally have learned a lot because I've never sort of before I went to COP touched this field of sustainability. And there's also a lot of greenwashing. There's a lot of information that you need to check and you need to dive into. So COP is really that amazing place, unique location and unique concentration of the right people to have this conversation with. And this year you hosted Digital Innovation Pavilion for the third year already in the role. So how was that, and what was the program? What are your highlights and your conclusions, also some perceptions of how this space is changing compared to past year?
Right. So when I first started to engage with blockchain companies and blockchain as a technology, I immediately realized that blockchain can actually revolutionize climate financing and solve lots of problems that climate finance was experiencing, and even now. Climate finance is a very complicated topic. It's something on top of the traditional financing science, so to say. So you should learn even more stuff to actually issue or invest into climate finance. And it has long been an institutional play, but we do need to increase climate financing to help developing countries enable economic growth while also decoupling economic growth from raising emissions, because the world cannot allow itself, to increase the emissions, because we're already not really attaining the Paris Agreement targets, which are, enable the economic growth while not actually exceeding a certain threshold of 2.5 degrees Celsius. So we cannot get the world warmer than 2.5 degrees. And right now the trajectory is even, going beyond 2.5 degrees. So we realize lots of benefits that blockchain can bring to climate financing, including transparency, including keeping the data around emission reductions. And climate finance is set to reduce GHG emissions. So with blockchain, we can track those reductions. We can make sure that those reductions were really made. We can enable the trust and transparency chain and have all the stakeholders report on their participation in those deals and whether the GHG reduction aims were really reached. And also we can enable private financing, retail investors to step in and invest along with the world banks of this world, in developing countries and communities, in various economic and social projects in places like Zanzibar. And so, Digital Innovation Pavilion is set to bring the innovators to the international negotiations level, to bridge them with policymakers, with UN guys, with global investors, corporations, and all together try to understand how we can use digital innovations and blockchain to actually help increase the amount of climate financing that is flowing into developing and developed countries as well to enable their green transition. So it's a place, it's a physical space during the United Nations Climate Conference where all the country representatives gather. So there are like 185 and 86 countries that are taking part in the climate conference. So every country is included. We have all the stakeholders from every country around the globe. We have politicians, we have experts, we have NGOs, we have financiers, we have innovators, we have like youth members and artists as well. So all of these people gather every year in a different country, and for 2 weeks they negotiate on the execution of the Paris Agreement goals on various levels. So our level is the private sector level, and we have this 2 week space where innovators and investors and policymakers gather and discuss how digital innovations can help us bring the Sustainable Development Goals agenda further and reach the Paris Agreement goals. So it's 2 weeks full of various events and discussions and workshops, which eventually lead to real action, real deals, real collaboration on the ground. And this year we had more than 20 countries participating in our activities, which actually means adoption. So before we were like, enthusiasts, innovators, like blockchain evangelists promoting the tech, and the use cases. And now what was different this year is that we had like 20 countries and ministers coming to the Digital Innovation Pavilion and asking for access to innovation, knowledge and innovation that we can bring to their countries and help them, achieve sustainable development goals and raise more climate financing.
And how do you raise climate finance for projects? Like, how would you help a country, or do you have a case study that you can share with us on, how this practically comes in place? Do you need to use a private blockchain? Do you need to use public blockchain? How important is the Web3 community, or all of this happens through partners and is more of a B2B approach? So for those who want to, explore sustainable finance through the blockchain and they come to you for a consultation, Alexey, help us launch with the blockchain technology, like teach us what's our pathway, how can we get onboarded, and what is our benefit?
It's a great question, Irina. So since 2018, since the fall of ICOs, I was a big proponent of like STOs, whatever it means, security tokens, regulated, blockchain infrastructure. And I do believe in this pathway, as well as I do believe in decentralized finance still. And there are these use cases. Although for my company, which is called Evercity, we realized that we need to start with providing digital climate finance infrastructure in a compliant way, in compliance with international standards, in compliance with the country regulations, because our topic, our niche, climate finance, is a very regulated topic, and you have all sorts of stakeholders involved in climate finance, including the government, including the UN and other international organizations. But at the same time, which was actually and still is attractive for the Web3 audience, many climate finance instruments, such as carbon credits or carbon forwards, they somehow sit in between the compliance and non-regulated markets. They're somehow in the gray area, so to say, and that's what led a lot of interest of Web3 folks to the carbon markets, for example. And there are many other environmental and climate assets that can benefit from a decentralized approach. But still, many of these folks were not succeeding in the end because they didn't understand how this should be bridged with the real world. So going back to Irina's quote, if you want to build something for climate and sustainability, it doesn't only have to be a revolutionary technology or idea. It has to be connected to the reality and solve the real market needs. And there is support, there is consensus that blockchain is a great fit for these markets already. So there were publications by the UN, by the various countries like EU, various banks, various regulators like Hong Kong Monetary Authority. So the publications and consensus, the understanding that Web3 can help climate finance is there. But what is lacking is the connection between the innovators, that the tech guys, and the guys who do the job on the ground, the NGOs, the governments, the various private sector members and projects, because they understand what is needed, and sometimes their needs is completely different from the technology that is promoting XYZ benefits. So if you go to Zanzibar, for example, if you're talking about monitoring, reporting, verification using blockchain or certain impact tokens or whatever, you have to go to the project, have to talk to the community and see what was really needed by, for example, this fishing village where I'm based now, and how these folks can access blockchains, and what are the details. So it's a multi-stakeholder dialogue which we are trying to maintain at the Digital Innovation Pavilion and within the Climate Change Coalition and within other events that we're doing. And this is not an easy task, but if you want to build something really long-lasting and sustainable, it's not that easy. So for those who want to innovate in this space, I encourage to look at our content on the dip.earth, where we actually, we streamlined all the events from the Digital Innovation Pavilion, and most of them were addressing the problems which, impact and sustainability and climate finance is facing right now, and how blockchain and other technologies can possibly solve those. But it's also important to, think global but act local. So connect with your local community, see their needs, try to better understand and provide them with the infrastructure that they need, because they do need your innovations, they do need your infrastructure. But sometimes it's very different from what people discuss at Web3 meetups, or whatever strategic sessions they're having, or DEF CONs. So go to the people, talk to the people, and solve real people's problem. The understanding that blockchain can solve those problems is already there, and the use cases are there. But we just need to get together and and go further. And by projects, I mean those projects that reduce CO2 emissions. This could be renewable energy projects. This could be sustainable farming projects and practices. This could be nature-based solutions, such as planting, trees or mangroves, or agroforestry. This could be transport, e-mobility projects. This could be, various like sustainable construction projects where houses are built, for example, from mushrooms. And these are real, projects that are being already deployed on the ground. What they do need, is support in raising financing, support and building trust of investors, in transparency, in liquidity, and also bringing private financing into climate finance. This problem is yet to be solved, and we in Evercity, we're starting with institutional funders. We're trying to get our reputation on the market. We're trying to learn from our partners on the ground and partners in countries like Uganda, with whom we have announced an official partnership at the climate conference, where Uganda government would be using our open source and white label software technology to accelerate their markets, to make them more efficient. And here I also encourage you to go beyond blockchain, because blockchain cannot solve all the problems, and it still has to be more user friendly and solve the business case. But at the same time, adding the Web3 component, even the private investment component, adding liquidity pools and all the Web3 mechanisms that have proved their efficiency in the Web3 space, they would eventually come to climate financing space, and they would make so much difference and so much impact on the communities on the ground. But this is a perspective, and this is what I encourage you to look at.
Wow, this is a lot of valuable information and a lot to unpack. And Alexey, I would like to ask you a number of questions based on what you just shared with us. Um, Number one, what were the most, in your opinion, impactful conversations at the Digital Innovation Pavilion this year? So, what do you see different from last year? Which maybe a vertical business case is growing or more in demand? Do you see more advancement in, let's say, e-mobility, or more advancement in carbon markets? Also in the news, the biggest news from the COP is that the Article 6.4 was approved, and that means that blockchain will be, it's officialized and will be used for carbon markets, which is a huge development and a huge step forward at this level, because just last year we were still, debating whether Bitcoin is a good network or not, whether it's polluting the world or not, whether cryptocurrency is a legitimate space at all. So, like, focusing on DIP, what are some of the highlights for you from the DIP this year?
Right. So, at the DIP, we had so many events and so many discussions, uh, touch basing on various topics, including, youth engagement culture, art, and various other things, AI. But the discussions that we were focused at were around like climate finance, as well as you mentioned, carbon markets. And as I said, it was not a discussion whether we need blockchain for carbon markets or climate finance or not. This discussion has already passed. This is now the discussion is what are the use cases? How we use it, how we bring this further, how we reduce, the barriers, etc., etc. So there is no discussion around, blockchain and climate finance. It's a marriage made in heavens. But some of the problems, still there, which are related with also the core, blockchain problems. And some of the most interesting, exciting discussions for me were discussions with countries. As I said before, we were enthusiasts. We were discussing with market members, the carbon projects, obviously, who want to get access to climate financing, use blockchain for additional transparency of their data. We discussed, with like climate carbon project developers who want to tap into liquidity and have more investments into their project portfolios. We have been discussing, with banks that were issuing such instruments as like green bonds on the blockchain to make sure that the projects financed by those green bonds would be making emission reductions and maybe even connect, carbon credits and those bonds. And also we've been discussing with, many projects around carbon forwards on the blockchain, and we announced a very big, one of the first landmark issuances of carbon forwards using Hedera Guardian framework, which provides us the full and ultimate transparency around the value chain. But what was most exciting is the involvement of governments. As I said, we had more than 20 governments engaging with us at the pavilion, asking about, implementations of blockchain and how we can use blockchain systems for the national carbon markets, and how we can use blockchains to connect those national carbon markets together, which is exactly what Article 6 of the Paris Agreement is doing. Article 6 of the Paris Agreement is defining how carbon credits can be traded in between countries and between international buyers and owners, providing like a very, very big incentive for those projects and credits to be issued and to be traded. So when we see Guardian articles, the press, the media outlet, the Guardian, which was questioning carbon markets, where they're here to stay or to go, or when we hear, other doubts around carbon markets, you can look at the Paris Agreement, which is a binding agreement for 185 countries, so 86 countries around the globe, most of the countries, and they agreed to reduce their emissions, and they agreed to enable the trade of carbon credits and between them. So this is a huge incentive, and those who would be able to tap into this incentive would definitely benefit from these markets. So that's a really big decision that was made this year. The countries have been deciding this for 10 years. So for 10 years, the conversation, the negotiations was ongoing, how we need to trade those credits. And then finally it's there. So it enables, a big market opportunity for all the market members and the innovators as well. And UN, World Bank, they have been already exploring blockchain use cases for many years. For example, World Bank has their own blockchain carbon registry for countries that can, put their emissions and carbon project information into this registry and benefit from transparency. So it's not a matter of, you know, adoption anymore. The adoption is there, and it's the matter of deployment and who will be deploying faster. But this is also a very regulated market, and you need to understand the needs. You need to talk to the government and all the other stakeholders. So it's not an easy market to tap into, but it's there.
Oh, this is super exciting, and I feel like this conversation needs to be heard at the crypto conferences and in the Web3 space, because there is still this gap between understanding from the blockchain projects, from innovator side, that the governments are actually ready. There are already pilots, proofs of concepts. Blockchain isn't something new, isn't something that you need to explain what blockchain is and what benefits it brings, especially for financial industries, because it seems like it's already there, the understanding is there. But there is probably a little bit of fear of the innovators community to jump into this very institutional and regulated space. And could you give us some insights, in regards to regulations? What is the most favorable regulatory environment and the country and the ecosystem where startups can thrive? Because now we also see that in the US we have a pro-crypto government, and US has always been an important market for carbon credits. Lots of these important conversations were held in New York. There's a number of important events like at the UN headquarters, Sustainability Week in New York. You are very familiar with those. And do you think that now with this new government, something may potentially change also for sustainable finance and green industries, or with the Trump administration sort of pushing back to traditional energy companies and saying, well, all this green agenda can wait, and we rather go back to oil and gas and support those companies back. And Trump is openly not caring about any green innovation. And then if there is the worst case scenario in terms of this green innovation, what could be, the next home for sustainable finance in terms of geography?
Right. Great question again, Irina. So we've already seen U.S. Withdrawing from the Paris Agreement during the first Trump's administration, and this actually changed nothing, because the Paris Agreement has already been adopted. Even without the U.S., there's enough combined power for the agreement to remain in place. And what we're seeing now also globally is a green transition and clean energy transition. We've seen, China rising, China being producer of most of the, electric vehicles and renewable energy equipment, etc., etc. Europe is leading on that as well, and they have all these, transition plans, etc., etc., etc. So the global economy is already shifting that way, which the U.S. and just 4 years of Trump's administration cannot actually change. And last time when Trump withdrew from the Paris Agreement, we had at the climate conference, we had this movement by the U.S. private sector financiers, corporates, which was called "We Are Still In" the agreement, effectively. So they were still supporting the agenda. They were still doing things because they are involved in the global economy, and the economy has changed. You cannot pollute anymore. You cannot, neglect ESG requirements anymore. This is driven by the Paris Agreement, and Paris Agreement is signed by every country around the globe. So this is a global trend, and the opportunities are here to stay. So this year, apart from adopting the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, there was another important announcement. So previously, developed countries contributed 100 billion US dollars of investments into developing countries to enable their, decarbonization and economic growth. But now this investment was tripled. So now there is a commitment of 300 billion US dollars that will be annually poured into developing countries. And this is a great opportunity because this will not just go alone. This would go along with so-called the blended finance. This is a climate financing term, which means there is public spending, public financing, but then it has to be blended with private financing. And these huge investments would enable tremendous investment opportunities for the private sector. So asset managers, pension funds, etc., would benefit from these investment flows, which would be invested in huge infrastructure, projects around the globe, which would either reduce emissions like e-mobility, renewable energy, many other things, but also mitigate, adapt to the consequences of climate change. So this could be resilient port infrastructure, resilient logistic hubs, and many other things. So huge investment flows are going there. U.S. companies, they're not stupid. They will still want to maintain their business in other countries than the U.S. They would want to decarbonize to cut their costs, become more resilient to the consequences of climate change, which is very has a very big impact on many companies and their value chains, etc. So these investments would be paired with private sector investments, and still there are great opportunities in this business. And in the US, there still will be great opportunities in this space. So we don't expect that Trump administration will just cancel all these things, all these industries. What he will do actually eventually, maybe he will do more um, um, in the US. So there will be more investments going into the US infrastructure. And so I'm not an US economy expert, but with folks with whom I talk, they are not very radical. They expect Trump to defend the US businesses, and big part of the US businesses is related to clean tech. So Trump is not an enemy of the US business. That's what I heard. But again, I don't know, I'm not American. I don't live in America. I just visit pretty often for various sustainability conferences. And the world is global now, and the humanity is moving towards the goals of the Paris Agreement. So the business opportunities are there, and I'm pretty sure that Trump, as a business person with a business mindset, he understands that. Although some of the things could be pushed back, and more oil projects would be developed in the United States, which might worsen U.S. position within the Paris Agreement in the future.
Yeah, this is a very, very interesting development, and we'll see how this goes from January onwards. But in terms of countries, in terms of your own business and your own positioning, where do you choose to work? I mean, obviously, you are, providing services globally. You work with decentralized infrastructure, but still, what is your um, favorite location in terms of regulations, government support, and also the growth of the projects that you work with? Is it Europe? Because here in Europe, I'm based in Spain, and we're seeing more and more, push towards green agenda, looking for other sources of energy, pushing the climate pact. Lots of subsidies are going into solar and other alternative sources of energy. Lots of subsidies are going into the hands of the citizens for like installing solar panels or whatnot. So in Europe, this is really a pressing topic, and this is really something that everybody is aware of. However, because of the tax regime, because of the regulations, it is still very, very slow. So even though there is a need, there is really pressing need for finding the solution. My perception is that we are, in Europe, the landscape and the support for innovation and for startups is not quite there yet. You may work with a Horizon program, you may work on the European level. There are policies in place, but in your experience, is there a magical place on this earth where startups are thriving and there is a thriving ecosystem of innovators for carbon markets and sustainable finance?
Yeah, exactly. So there were several centers that tried to benefit from the combination of Web3, blockchain, and climate finance. So I can name just a few. Luxembourg, which have this convergence in their core strategy, like country level strategy. You can look up their documents, and what they're saying is that we want to be the leaders in digital, we want to be the leaders in climate finance, we want to be the leaders in digital climate finance. Then that's Switzerland as well. So 2 European jurisdictions are there. Although the whole economic situation in Europe is not really going up, it's not improving. It's actually declining. So I'm not a big believer in the Europe in the midterm. Then we have Singapore, we have Hong Kong, which also are doing lots of blockchain use cases for ESG and climate finance, and they do encourage it. Starting from their regulators, their VCs, and the whole industry, they're really making this push, and the ecosystem there is thriving. So if you have Asia in your focus, or you're coming from these countries, or Asia in particular, these are the places to be. I know that Japan is also trying to develop something in this space, so that might be an interesting market if you understand it and know how to work there and have the patience. But what is most interesting for me, and this is why we're doing our transition from Berlin to Abu Dhabi, is the UAE market, because UAE just hosted their climate conference, the UN climate conference last year, and that was a major success. UAE made tremendous commitments, investing, to invest in like Africa, to invest in developing countries, to mobilize a lot of money for climate finance investments, including a 30 billion Abu Dhabi-based Altera fund, which would invest in climate projects around the globe, which is one of the biggest funds out there with the climate mandate. And if you look at the blockchain regulations, they're easing, and they are very concrete. And more blockchain companies and blockchain bros are going to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So I've just came from the Abu Dhabi Finance Week, and there was a blockchain day where Circle was one of the sponsors. We had Bitcoin Suisse, we had all the big players, the historical players, and they're all now opening their offices in Abu Dhabi, which means they do believe in this market from the crypto standpoint. So UAE, and particularly Abu Dhabi and Dubai, is a great place for doing climate finance and ESG blockchain innovations, because there is a growing VC space. There are lots of investors, lots of meetups, and there's a very clear regulation from the government standpoint, which is one of the most advanced regulations in their entire world. And what makes Abu Dhabi especially attractive for Evercity is the opportunity to connect with developing countries, because you have flights to everywhere in the world, and you can easily go to Uganda, you can easily go to Tanzania, Senegal, and go connect with the projects, with the regulators there, with the governments, and see what's there. But the next big thing is Africa, and I do believe that African countries, Africa as a whole, have tremendous demand for digital innovations and financing infrastructure, because previous infrastructure was brought to them by the Europeans, by the US, and they were using someone else's infrastructure solutions in a centralized way. So now blockchain Web3 enables Africa to decolonize, so to say, the infrastructure, to own their own infrastructure, but still benefit from trust and transparency that blockchain can provide, and tap into international capital markets and climate finance markets. So Africa is a great test bed for blockchain technologies right now, and the conversations with the governments are easier here than in many countries like Europe because they're less bureaucratic. But you have to understand the local, specifics, and treat everyone well. Treat everyone as you would treat yourself or your mother, and then the opportunities will be opened up here. So the next big thing is definitely Africa. The hottest blockchain, crypto, and climate finance space now is UAE, especially Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, super exciting. So for everybody looking for a new home, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, UAE is open, and you have fantastic companies. And Alexey is your guide towards sustainable finance. And you can find evercity.io website and all the information. And Alexey, what is the focus for you at Evercity for the upcoming year? And also, what are the highlights of this year? Maybe some strategic partnerships. The biggest thing you're proud of this year, some of the greatest achievements. As we are in December now, it's time to look back and reflect on this was a fairly mild year for our industry, as the space is kind of waking up. We are in the bull market for Bitcoin. VCs are coming in. So I feel I have this perception in these conversations that yes, we're back. We're so back. The innovation is here. There is a support, and so the biggest thing for Evercity that happened in 2024, your projection for 2025, and also I wanted to ask you this very important question about the underlying ecosystem. So why you choose the blockchain ecosystem you work in, and maybe if you can give us a little bit of an overview of like sort of name the key factors that you consider when choosing blockchain ecosystem, because I've advised a number of green projects, sustainable projects, NGOs, and it's really complicated space. Making it in this space on the blockchain really depends on the choice of your ecosystem. So you either make it great or you fail. So for those watching us, who just got in the space, they probably heard about the hype of last cycle. There were NFTs that helped fundraise for carbon markets. There were NFTs representing real trees that you could donate to and grow them virtually, and then the actual forest or NGO that overlooks the forest got that financing. And some things worked, some things didn't, because clearly we are still in a phase of experimentation, and there's a lot of the off-chain stuff. But when it comes to on-chain, it will be super helpful for those watching us to know how to make it right in this cycle, and before they launch, consider what needs to be considered in terms of choice of the ecosystem.
Right. So, maybe it becomes a little bit boring, but the thing that I want to highlight, as for Evercity, one of the highlights is, of course, the institutional adoption that we're starting to really, to see and witness. And as the year comes to an end, we've announced, or we've started, we're into negotiations with some big institutional players from the financing world, with some multilateral development institutions, development banks that are focused on financing projects in the developing countries, and they do need transparency solutions. They do need reporting solutions. They do need additional liquidity solutions, and that's a major breakthrough, because before that it was not really moving. It was like just really on the concept phase, and now we see the demand from their side. So that's a big change. Before that we were pushing, and now we see the demand and the understanding from their side. So that's one of the big things. The other thing is that the countries, we didn't expect 20 countries to come to the Digital Innovation Pavilion and show the the knowledge and the desire to bring digital innovations and blockchain into their countries, and especially combining this with with climate financing. So I think our joint efforts with you guys since like many years, finally they're starting to to result in something, and really the understanding of the um, of the clients. We also learned that we need to make our tools, our services really more accessible to the developing countries and to the projects in developing countries. So we shifted our business model a little bit, getting rid of certain part of our SaaS based revenues and focusing more on the success fees. That's also one of the learnings, and which all of these learnings, these are the fruits of our long-standing institutional adoption like strategy that we were trying to reach out to those institutions, and the UN Climate Conference really helped us to do that. And from the technical standpoint, from the ecosystem standpoint, we were really blessed to have Hedera and HBAR Foundation as our backers, as our supporters, because we've been experimenting with many other ecosystems. So we started our journey in 2016, 17 with Ethereum, which was great, and I still believe in Ethereum and Polygon ecosystems going further. Then we switched to Polkadot, and Polkadot was some sort of um, some sort of regret from our side, because we were trying to reach out to to the core community, Polkadot community, and try to educate around the sustainability, sustainable finance, and the opportunities that it can bring. But Polkadot never made focus on this use case and like institutional adoption. While Hedera is actually doing its main focus on the institutional adoption, on the corporates. There are more than 20 huge corporates in the Hedera Governing Council, and they all committed to buying assets on Hedera. So maybe they're not buying big time right now due to various reasons. Maybe because of the immature, Hedera-based ecosystem as well. Hedera-based ecosystem has to do a big evolution going further, but the corporate demand is there. They're engaging corporates, and they are trying to understand the corporate needs and trying to make the software and the ecosystem aligned with those corporate needs and the government needs. And we do appreciate the support. At the same time, Hedera is also bullish on the pure Web3 use cases, etc., etc. But what makes Hedera really different is the understanding of the corporate world and the compliance world, and really helping the ecosystem members to reach out to those corporate clients and buyers. For us, this is a big deal because corporates and governments are part of the game. We do need their approvals, we do need their engagement, we do need them to purchase carbon credits and other environmental assets. We do need them to issue various climate finance assets, and we can help them. But what helps us communicate with them is definitely Hedera. And talking about climate finance, Hedera has this Hedera Guardian framework, which is a specialized framework which helps you build climate finance and sustainability use cases and projects on Hedera. It's like a low or no code environment where you can actually, without really very deep technical knowledge, actually build up your use case and then present it to corporates within the Hedera network. I think this is a very unique, very exclusive offering that Hedera has to offer to the community members, and I would encourage you guys to look into that. Hedera also does its hackathons with pretty good prizes, etc. And it's not a very I like Hedera, I like what they're doing, and we're very synergetic in many ways, but they still need you guys to come and offer various parts of the ecosystem, because it's still very new, it's very dynamically developing. We've seen what happened with HBAR token recently after the announcement of ETFs, HBAR ETFs. So there is more interest right now, and the ecosystem is still waiting for its members. There are many members already, but there's still it's not that developed, it's not that wide as Polygon or Ethereum ecosystem, which means there are much more opportunities. And if you see the opportunity in connecting Web3 use cases with the real life use cases and the corporate B2B world, then it's a great fit for you, and we are very happy, to be there. Also, they're helping us fundraise, helping us, get to various events like the World Economic Forum. So this is really a great, opportunity, and they really help. They don't not only give grants, they not only like do hackathons or whatever. They also really track your progress. They help you succeed, and this is a very different approach that we really very much appreciate.
This is fantastic. And yeah, HBAR Foundation has been a long-term partner also of Digital Innovation Pavilion. And I I really enjoy conversations with HBAR, and guys, they really invest with time, with consideration, and they are ready to support you for year two, and like not just demand immediate results. And I think this is super valuable, and they've done like a really good job on, very difficult, heavy lifting on onboarding corporations, because it is the heavy part of the negotiations and education for these big companies. They're very complex. Decision making is very complex, and there are layers to it. So then startups can actually come on board and can start building and already have all the support in terms of grants, in terms of tools, infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. And Alexey, what are you looking forward to in 2025 for Evercity? Are there any events that you're planning for the first quarter? Any big announcements, et cetera?
Well, one of the big events that will be like immediately in January is the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week, where finance will also have a big agenda, and we're gonna participate. I'm not gonna, make the announcements that we're yet to make in the next year, because they are now still in progress. But there's probably will be very big announcements, I hope, going further on the institutional adoption side, and bring together governments and stakeholders to support climate finance markets in developing countries. So that's would be one of our core focuses. We'll also focus on enabling green bonds on the blockchain at scale, not only in the pilot phases, but like largely, so that a lot of money can be um, poured into climate projects in developing countries. And yeah, so I think it's going to be an exciting year, and especially COP30 in Brazil is going to be a very big climate conference, because Brazil is everyone's favorite. Brazil has Amazon, and Brazil has tremendous environmental and climate issues that are yet to be solved. And digital component will be largely part of the solution, and is already part of the solution. So I know a lot of refi groups that are solving challenges in the Amazon, and you might know them. So Amazon is also a test bed for blockchain technology. So follow the conversation, try to get into the COP30, and if you're interested in learning more, you can always reach out to us and be part of the Digital Innovation Pavilion. We'll start, crafting it starting from January, February, because we have so many partners, and some of the governments want to join the pavilion themselves. So this is also a big announcement. There were, some governments want to support the Digital Innovation Pavilion. And we're going to have other events in New York Climate Week, and some of the others. So stay tuned. I want to say big thank you to Irina for ending this year with such an important topic. And end of the year is definitely the time when we can think of our impact, what we did for the not only for ourselves, but also our families, our friends, our colleagues, and our fellow brothers and sisters around the globe, what we did for environment. And this is the right time to think about it and plan the next year. So let's get together, and let's make the world a better place together using blockchain and crypto. This is my strong belief is that that's one of the reasons we have blockchain and crypto, to make the world a better place, and not only financially, but also from the development standpoint. And I don't want to miss the sunset. And I wish you also not to miss the sunset, have more sunsets in your upcoming year. Enjoy life, and also think about our close ones, and think about the planet where we live, and which gave birth to us, and helped us succeed. So thanks a lot, Irina.
Thank you
Dear
so
audience,
much, Alexey.
Yeah.
Thank you. This was a fantastic episode. Where can we follow you? Where are you most active? LinkedIn, Twitter,
Uh,
some of the links.
so yeah, LinkedIn is definitely something because we are in B2B space. Telegram as well, and also for the Digital Innovation Pavilion, there's dip.earth website right now where you can find the content and also write to us directly and get in touch. Yeah, so email, LinkedIn, whatever. Also through Irina. Irina is our long-standing partner and a very big evangelist of sustainability in blockchain. So thank you, Irina, once again, and thanks everyone, and wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you so much, Alexey. Happy New Year, and thank you for
Bye
coming to the
bye.
show. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. And this is the last episode of 2024. I wish you a wonderful Christmas. If you're celebrating, I wish you a happy 2025. Make all your dreams and plans come true in this new year, and taking this opportunity to thank you for being with us this whole year, for following the business case for Web3. And next year we're bringing even more episodes and more exciting guests. So follow the business case for Web3 on LinkedIn and X. And thank you so much once again. See you.